The sun shone brightly over Los Angeles, making the glass windows of the big fancy houses in Beverly Hills sparkle. This was a place where only rich people lived, a neighborhood where expensive cars rolled down the streets, and every house looked like a palace. Everything was perfect here. The lawns were freshly cut, the flowers were colorful, and not a single piece of trash was in sight. Most of the people walking around wore designer clothes, sunglasses that cost more than a regular person's rent, and jewelry that shined like the sun. They fit perfectly in this world of money and luxury. But that morning, a woman in a gray hoodie and jeans walked along the sidewalk. She looked different from everyone else. Some people glanced at her quickly, while others stared without hiding their surprise. Her name was Sandra Annette. She wasn't dressed like the people in this neighborhood. Her hoodie was loose, her jeans were simple, and her sneakers were comfortable rather than stylish. She didn't have expensive jewelry or a fancy handbag. To many people in this area, she looked out of place. Sandra, however, didn't seem to care. She walked with confidence, her eyes scanning the houses as if she belonged there. She finally stopped in front of a massive modern house. The house was like something out of a dream. Its entire front was made of glass, allowing anyone outside to see inside. The interior was breathtaking. Huge chandeliers, white marble floors, and sleek furniture. In front of the house was a garden so perfect it looked fake. Each plant and flower was trimmed to perfection. The driveway was empty, but the garage door was large enough to fit multiple luxury cars. Sandra took a deep breath. Then she stepped forward toward the entrance. Standing by the door was a woman in a fitted beige blazer, a neat skirt, and tall high heels. She had sleek blonde hair, not a strand out of place. Around her neck was a delicate gold chain, and on her ears, diamond earrings sparkled in the sunlight. She held a clipboard and had a perfect, practiced smile. Her name tag read, Cora Livingston. Cora was the real estate agent. Her job was to sell expensive houses like this one. As Sandra approached, Cora's polite smile stayed on her face, but her eyes showed something else, curiosity, maybe even doubt. "Good morning," Cora said, her voice smooth and professional. "Are you here for the house tour?" Sandra nodded. "Yes. I'm interested in the property." Cora's smile didn't change, but her eyes quickly moved up and down, looking at Sandra's hoodie and sneakers. Sandra could see it in Cora's face. The agent didn't think she was a serious buyer. "Oh, how interesting," Cora said. "Well, we usually work with buyers who are familiar with this type of market." Sandra caught the meaning behind those words. Cora was politely saying that this house was for rich people, and Sandra didn't look rich. But Sandra didn't react. She kept her face neutral. "Great," she said. "Then you'll have no problem showing me around." Cora hesitated for a split second. Then, with a small sigh, she turned and unlocked the front door. "Of course," Cora said. "Right this way." The door swung open, revealing the full beauty of the home. The first thing Sandra noticed was the white marble flooring, polished so perfectly that it reflected the light streaming in from the giant windows. A huge staircase made of dark wood led to the second floor. The living room was massive, with a ceiling so high it felt like the sky was inside the house. One entire wall was made of glass, giving a full view of the Los Angeles hills. The landscape stretched for miles, with green trees and rooftops of other luxurious homes in the distance. The house was quiet, peaceful, powerful. Sandra walked inside slowly, her eyes scanning every inch. She moved toward the open-concept kitchen, where sleek black quartz countertops shimmered under the lights. She ran her fingers along the surface. "Are these finishes imported?" she asked casually. Cora blinked. It was clear she hadn't expected such a specific question. "Oh yes," she said, recovering quickly. The designer hand-selected exclusive materials to ensure both quality and elegance. Sandra nodded but said nothing. She just kept walking, studying every detail. Behind her, Cora followed, her high heels clicking against the marble floor. Sandra could feel the agent watching her, waiting for her to say or do something that would prove she didn't belong. "You know," Cora said suddenly, "this house is listed at $25 million. It's quite the investment." Sandra raised an eyebrow. "And you think I shouldn't be here?" Cora let out a small, artificial laugh. "Oh no, of course not. But perhaps you'd be more interested in something a little more accessible? I could show you some apartments in the downtown area." Sandra remained calm, but inside she smirked. Cora had already decided she couldn't afford this house. "Interesting," Sandra said. "But I think you're underestimating me." Cora opened her mouth to respond but stopped herself. Sandra looked around the house again. She could see something here, something Cora didn't understand. It was like she could already picture what she wanted to do with this place. She kept walking. "So," Cora said, forcing a smile, "may I ask exactly what you're looking for?" Sandra turned to her. "A house with a strong foundation, high-quality finishes, and most importantly, a valuable investment." Cora chuckled. "Of course. But this isn't just any investment. People who buy homes in this price range, they truly understand luxury real estate." Sandra tilted her head slightly. "And you think I don't?" Cora hesitated. Her eyes flickered, but her expression stayed polite. "Well," Cora said carefully, "a purchase like this requires serious financial commitment." Sandra crossed her arms. People had judged her by her appearance before. It wasn't new. But there was something about Cora's tone that amused her. Cora truly believed she was in control of this conversation. "Good to know," Sandra said. "Now, tell me more about the house." Cora took a breath and adjusted her blazer. "All right. This property has 6 bedrooms, each with its own private balcony and walk-in closet. The living room has double-height ceilings and opens to the outdoor area, where you'll find an infinity pool with a panoramic view of Los Angeles. There's also a private movie theater with state-of-the-art technology. And, of course, the house has a smart home system. You can control the lights, temperature, and security with an app." Sandra listened but didn't look impressed. "And what about the foundation?" she asked. Cora blinked. "The foundation?" "Yes," Sandra said. "This area has unstable soil. Was the construction reinforced?" Cora's smile faltered. "Well, I can certainly find that information for you," Cora said, "but most of our clients focus more on the design and aesthetics of the home." Sandra smirked slightly. "Maybe that's because people buy houses for status, not to actually live in them." Cora's face twitched slightly. "May I ask what industry you work in?" Cora asked, now clearly curious. Sandra shrugged. "Let's just say I know a good investment when I see one." A long silence followed. Cora finally sighed. "Well, if you'd like, I can show you homes that better fit your profile." Sandra raised an eyebrow. "My profile?" Cora laughed softly. "You do understand the value of this property, right?" Sandra smiled. "And what if I want to make an offer?" Cora froze. For the first time, she didn't know what to say. Sandra slowly turned to face Cora, her eyes calm but curious. "What do you mean? I thought I was here to see the house. Isn't that your job?" Cora let out a short, dry laugh, folding her arms. "Technically, yes. But I prefer to spend my time with serious buyers. You understand, don't you? My time is valuable." Sandra raised an eyebrow. "And what makes you think I'm not a serious buyer?" Cora smirked, then waved a hand at Sandra as if the answer was obvious. "Do you really want me to say it out loud?" Sandra smirked right back. "Yes. Be honest." Cora sighed loudly, shaking her head as if she was tired of explaining. "Okay, let's be honest then. You walked in here looking like you just came from a budget grocery store. A hoodie, jeans, sneakers. Nothing about you says you belong in a house like this. You didn't come in a fancy car. You don't have an assistant. You're not asking the questions rich people ask." She took a step closer, lowering her voice slightly, making sure every word sounded extra mean. "And the worst part? You don't act like someone who can afford a house like this. Rich people have a certain presence. They walk in and they buy. They don't ask about things like the foundation. They don't sit quietly, pretending to be mysterious. And you? You don't fit that profile. Not even close." Silence filled the room. Sandra didn't look upset. Instead, she chuckled, a light, amused laugh. "Wow, that was impressive." Cora tilted her head, looking proud of herself. "Well, at least now we're being honest." Sandra shook her head slowly, like she couldn't believe what she had just heard. "You must be really good at your job, Cora. What's interesting to me is that you don't just judge people by their looks. You actually believe you're right. Like you think you know everything about me just because I'm not carrying a fancy handbag or stepping out of a luxury car." Cora took another step closer. "It's not just about looks. It's about what you show the world." Sandra narrowed her eyes. "And what do I show?" Cora smirked. "Someone who doesn't belong." Sandra held her gaze, steady and unbothered. "Have you ever thought that maybe you're making a huge mistake?" Cora sighed loudly, clearly losing patience. "You know what? If you want to keep pretending, go ahead. But honestly, I'm wasting my time." She turned to leave, but before she could take another step, Sandra crossed her arms and said in a firm but calm voice, "If I were you, I'd stay a little longer." Cora stopped walking. "Oh, and why is that?" Before Sandra could answer, the sound of a powerful car engine filled the air. Cora turned toward the glass door, her eyebrows furrowing as a sleek black Porsche 911 Turbo S pulled up smoothly in front of the house. Her eyes widened. The car door opened and a tall man stepped out. He was dressed simply in a dark jacket, jeans, and sunglasses. His movements were smooth and confident, but there was something special about him. Cora didn't recognize him at first, but then he took off his sunglasses. Her heart skipped a beat. Keanu Reeves. She froze. What was he doing here? And why was he walking straight toward Sandra? Keanu smiled as he approached. Hope I'm not late. Sandra turned to him with a relaxed smile. Actually, you're right on time. Cora blinked, her brain struggling to catch up. Mr. Reeves, she said quickly, her voice suddenly polite and excited. What a surprise. I had no idea you were interested in this property. Keanu glanced around casually. Oh, I'm not. He looked at Sandra. But she is. Cora felt like the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. Her face turned pale. She had made a huge mistake. Sandra watched Cora's reaction, savoring the moment. You know, Cora, you were right about one thing. Cora barely managed to whisper, Oh? Sandra smiled. Some people don't belong in this world. She paused for a moment before adding, But I'm not the one who doesn't belong here. Cora swallowed hard. The weight of her mistake crashed down on her. Keanu looked between the two women, sensing that something had just happened. I believe Sandra wants to hear more about the house. Can we continue the tour? Cora took a deep breath, forcing herself to act normal. Her mind was racing, but she put on a fake smile. Of course. Please make yourselves comfortable. Sandra gave her one last look before crossing her arms. Then she said with a small, sharp smile, Now that you know I'm a serious buyer, why don't you repeat all that information you gave me earlier? Cora's face burned with embarrassment. She had made a terrible mistake, and now she had to fix it. Cora always prided herself on staying in control during business deals. But now, standing in front of Keanu Reeves, realizing she had just insulted a real buyer, she felt something new. Panic. Sandra, on the other hand, looked perfectly calm. She crossed her arms, a small smirk tugging at her lips. Keanu looked between them, sensing the tension in the air. So, Sandra, what do you think of the place so far? Cora quickly tried to act professional again. She cleared her throat. Oh, Mr. Reeves, this property is truly one of the finest estates in Los Angeles. It has. Keanu raised a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. I was asking Sandra. Cora's jaw tightened. Sandra slowly walked to the center of the room, looking around carefully. Well, she said, the layout is impressive. The craftsmanship is high quality. But there are some things that concern me. Keanu nodded. Like what? Sandra turned to Cora, her gaze sharp. For starters, I was curious about the foundation. Since this area has earthquakes sometimes, I asked about it earlier. But my question was ignored. Cora felt her face heat up. I can provide that information. It's just that most buyers don't. Sandra interrupted. Most buyers don't ask about the safety of a $25 million house? Cora swallowed. I just meant. Well, luxury buyers usually care more about design and prestige than structure. Keanu raised an eyebrow. That's funny. I'd think anyone spending that much money would care if their house could survive an earthquake. Sandra smirked. That's exactly what I thought. Cora felt her confidence slipping. For the first time in years, she didn't know what to do. She had been so eager to judge Sandra that she had completely misread the situation. Trying to recover, she quickly changed her approach. Of course, Sandra, if this is a concern, I'd be happy to arrange an inspection or provide documents about the house's safety. Sandra raised an eyebrow. Now that you know I'm serious? Cora flinched. Keanu chuckled, making Cora feel even more embarrassed. You know, Sandra has a great eye for real estate. She's very detail-oriented. Cora hesitated. Oh, you two work together? Keanu smiled. You could say that. Sandra smirked. Or you could say, I don't need an assistant to know what I'm doing. Cora swallowed her pride, nodding quickly. Of course. Well, let me get you all the details. As Cora rushed to correct her mistake, Sandra and Keanu exchanged knowing looks. Sandra had won. And Cora? She had just learned a very expensive lesson. Sandra looked at Keanu before she answered. Let's just say I don't make choices quickly. And when I do, I like to work with people who respect my decisions. Her words were sharp. Cora knew she had lost a client, and maybe even more. But she wasn't ready to give up just yet. Sandra, if I was wrong about you, I'm really sorry, Cora said. In this business, we sometimes assume things too quickly. But I should have treated you differently. Sandra stayed quiet for a moment, making Cora nervous. Then she finally spoke. Apology noted. But trust isn't built with just words, Cora. It has to be earned. Cora's stomach felt tight. She had made a big mistake. Keanu smiled. He knew Sandra had made her point. Now, how about we keep going with the tour? He said. I'd love to hear more of Sandra's thoughts on this place. Cora forced a smile and nodded. She led them into the next room, but she knew she had already lost control of the situation. And Sandra? She was just getting started. Cora walked through the house, leading Sandra and Keanu. Usually she was very confident. She had spent years learning how to understand rich clients. But today she had messed up. Sandra wasn't just a visitor. She was a buyer. And not just any buyer, a powerful one. Sandra and Keanu walked behind her, looking at everything carefully. The energy in the room had changed. Cora was no longer in charge. She cleared her throat and tried to act normal. So, as you can see, this open kitchen has imported Italian marble, custom-made cabinets, and high-end appliances. Sandra touched the countertop. Italian marble? Interesting choice, she said. How well does it handle stains? Cora hesitated. Well, marble is very fancy, but you have to be careful with it, she admitted. Sandra smirked. So, it stains easily? Cora let out a small, nervous laugh. Some people care more about looks than how practical something is, she said. Sandra turned to Keanu. What do you think? She asked. Wouldn't quartzite be a better choice? It's just as beautiful but much stronger. Keanu nodded. I'd pick quartzite, he said. It's easier to take care of and it still looks expensive. Sandra looked back at Cora. Strange, she said. A house this expensive should have the best materials, not just the prettiest ones. Almost like it was made for people who only care about how things look. Cora's face tightened. We choose materials based on what the market wants, she said quickly. Sandra chuckled. The market? She repeated. And yet you judged me based on my clothes. Maybe the market isn't as easy to predict as you think. Cora swallowed hard. Let's move on to the master suite, she said. She led them up a sleek staircase to a giant bedroom. This suite includes a private terrace, 2 walk-in closets, and a spa-style bathroom with sunset views, she said. Sandra stepped onto the terrace and looked at the breathtaking city view. Keanu joined her. It's an amazing view, he said. Sandra nodded. It is, she agreed. But views don't build trust. Cora stiffened. What do you mean? She asked. Sandra turned to face her. This house is beautiful, she said. But I'm not just buying a home. I'm investing in the experience, the people, and the process. And after today, I don't know if I trust you to handle that. Cora's stomach twisted. Sandra held up a hand. No excuses, she said. You judged me before you even knew me. And now, because of Keanu, you're trying to fix your mistake. That's not professionalism. That's just trying to save yourself. Cora took a deep breath. You're right, she admitted. I misjudged you and I regret it. Sandra studied her. Regret doesn't mean much, she said. What matters is whether you actually learn from it. Cora nodded. Keanu smiled, breaking the tension. So what's next? He asked. Sandra looked back at the house, her face unreadable. Now we talk numbers, she said. Cora stood frozen. She had spent years selling expensive houses to rich people, but she had never felt so small in front of a buyer. Sandra had seen right through her. Cora had no choice but to face the truth. She took a deep breath and forced herself to focus. Sandra, I know I made a mistake, she said, and I regret it, but I don't want to just apologize, I want to fix it. Sandra raised an eyebrow. And how do you plan to do that? She asked. Cora hesitated. By handling this deal the right way, she said. No assumptions. No judgments. Just professionalism. Sandra looked at her for a long moment, then sighed. All right, she said. Let's see if you really mean that. She glanced at Keanu, then back at Cora. I'm making an offer. 30 million. Cora blinked. That's more than the asking price, she said, surprised. Sandra's eyes narrowed. Cora swallowed. Yes, she said quickly. And not because of who you are, but because I respect you. For the first time, Sandra's expression softened. All right, Cora, she said. Let's see if you're serious. I'll keep you updated. Cora's face brightened. Keanu nudged Sandra. Looks like you just got yourself a business partner, he teased. Sandra laughed. Maybe, she said. But first, let's celebrate. With that, she and Keanu stepped outside. The sun was setting over the city. This was just the beginning. The deal was done. But the real event was yet to come. Sandra's housewarming party was going to change everything. But how? If you enjoyed this story, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more exciting stories filled with adventure, mystery, and unforgettable moments. Your support means the world. It keeps these stories coming and the creativity flowing. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.